You're tuned into Taiwan Grooves. Let's explore the local music scene. Greetings and welcome to another episode of Taiwan Grooves. In today's episode, I am going to have a nice chat with another musician. And by musician, I mean composer, songwriter, keyboardist, violinist, vocalist, with guitar and bass skills as well. I'm talking about Maxwell Lee from Project Maximus. And he's back on the scene after almost 10-year hiatus, ready to pursue his passion once again in all genres and styles. And we're going to dive into his past, present, and future. So please, let's welcome Project Maximus in the studio. So Max, thank you very much for coming all the way here and making the time to meet me.
Of course.
Yeah, so for all the listeners, would you briefly like to introduce yourself?
Okay, I'll try my best. I'm Max.
Mm-hmm.
I play music, mainly piano. I guess everybody asks me this. I was mainly piano, but I also play violin and a little bit of guitar.
Multi-talented. Very good.
I like all kinds of music. I really do. When I was younger and I was really listening to a lot of music, I listened to everything. Then I guess as we'll get into, I took a long break from music, and so I kind of lost touch with everything that was happening in the music world. And then more recently, now that I live in Taiwan, I listen to whatever is available. But I don't, to be honest, I don't have a ton of time to spend exploring new music like I used to. So now I guess I'm mostly listening to pop and stuff like that. But yeah, I really, at least in the past, I used to like everything. I used to listen to everything, and I tried to write music in many different genres. Tried to sort of create hybrid genres as well. So that was something I used to do, and I'd love to do that again if I can find the time.
Very good. I'm happy that you're back into music, and I believe that stronger and at the peak than before.
Thanks. That's what I'm telling myself.
Good. Keep it that way. I have had the chance to, first time when you recorded with Axel and John at, I don't remember the name of the studio.
Oh, okay.
Somewhere in December.
Yeah, Rhythm Music Studio.
Rhythm Music Studio, right.
Yeah.
And Axel showed me this, like, hey, we got a new project going. I listened, I was like, wow, this is great. A couple months later, a couple weeks later, I have witnessed the same trio in Irrigation. So Axel's also the show he runs. And yeah, it was great.
Oh, thanks.
I was very surprised because you are, as you said, you are pretty much fluent, if I can use this word, in violin and piano. So with that in mind, I would like to kind of like explore your past, like what or who inspired you to play music, and why did you get into these two instruments?
Who inspired me? It's not an interesting answer. I started playing when I was 3 years old.
Wow.
And my parents pretty much were the ones who forced it on me. So
I'm jealous of that, because you come to hate it at some point, but later you grow up and you're like, wow,
yes,
I can do all these things.
You're absolutely right. I kind of had that experience because I was playing violin for as early as I can remember. So it was like walking for me. And piano I started I think around 5, maybe 6. So a little bit later, but in both instances, there were times when I really didn't want to do it anymore when I was younger. And I was kind of forced to continue in a sense. Like I just didn't have a good alternative, because by the time my parents gave me the option to choose what I wanted to do, I was already so deep into it that it didn't really make sense for me to just quit at that point. Like it was sort of when I was a teenager already, and they say, okay, well, go tell your teachers you're done. And I couldn't.
Wow, such a pressure. Go.
So it was something I just continued. And then when I hit college, like right when I graduated high school, I stopped. I said, okay, I'm not doing, at least I'm not going to train in classical music anymore, which is what I had been doing, practicing, hours and hours a day. For both violin and piano, and I still loved music at that time. When I was going to college, I was really getting into other forms besides classical.
So college was not music related.
not when I first started.
Okay.
I thought that chapter was behind me, and I was going to pursue some musical projects in other genres, but I wasn't going to continue with classical music. And then life happens, and I changed my major, the focus of my degree. I changed twice. And then on my third time, each time I wasn't really happy one way or another. And so on my third change, I switched to music. My mom suggested it. She said, I still don't know to this day whether she was serious or not, but she suggested I do music. And at the time, I thought maybe she was just frustrated with me not being able to find something that I wanted to do. So I thought maybe she was just tossing it out there in a way, expressing her frustration. But I took her up on that, and I said, okay, I'll try music then. And that's what stuck.
I mean, that's great. Some parents probably will try to talk their kids out of music.
Yeah.
It's like, it's hard to make a career.
Yes.
It's too competitive. So
yes.
How about you focus on engineering or something
Yes.
else? And there was a person who came through called Funky Mo. I don't know if you ever heard of this guy. Very talented as well. And he's inspiring as well because he gave up 3 colleges to go to the 4th one to pursue music. And then he found what really liked, and then he stuck with it, and he graduated, he finished, now he's making good music. So I was
cool.
I was impressed.
Yeah, so for me, it was a little different. I switched to music, and actually the music professors at my college, they knew me. They had recruited me and wanted me to study with back when I was in high school, and I like I said, I was quitting when I went to college. So it kind of was easy for me to fall back into it because they knew me, they wanted me, and so everybody was excited, and it's like, oh yeah, this is great. This is where I'm meant to be in a sense. But I was really then at that point I was 2 years into college, so I felt very behind if I was really going to pursue music, and so I really focused just on classical again. I was back to like the sort of conservatory training, and that's a regret I have because I wish I had taken the opportunity back then to really pursue some of the projects that I wanted to do outside of classical music. I wish I had taken that time to do it then when there was more time. So instead, I focused on classical. I really wanted to get as good as I could and catch up as much as I could. And that's what I did. And then I went on to grad school for piano performance in classical music. And so that kind of consumed my focus for a long time. But I think if I can take away a positive from the experiences, that probably gave me a good amount of self-discipline when it comes to the craft, I guess. And then it also gave me a very, very strong technical background. So even though as I was doing it, I always felt it wasn't what I was going to pursue as a career. Classical music wasn't what I was going to pursue as a career. I still just wanted to do it because that was what was in front of me. And after I graduated with a master's degree, that was when I said, okay, I'm going to try and do other things now. And so sometimes I think I wasted a few years going down that path when I knew I wasn't going to actually try to make a career out of classical performance. But sure, it gives me tools that I can use for other things. So I guess I'm grateful for that. And kind of what you had asked me at the beginning, this is what I was thinking, was that it is sort of a special ability that I didn't maintain, but then I'm able to come back to it, 10 years later, and then still have some foundation that I think certainly I wouldn't have if I hadn't gone through all that training for so many years. So it felt, I don't want this to sound wrong, but it kind of felt like a superpower in a sense, because I hadn't been playing music for a long time, and part of the reason why I kept putting it off is because I just thought, to get back into music is going to take me so long, so many hours to get back into it. But then actually, once I actually finally started, it came back much quicker than I thought it would. And so
muscle memory.
Yeah, it felt a little bit like a superpower. Like, oh, I had this all along, and I can bring it back. And so
very good. I believe it was like a lot of self-discipline and composition skills for sure. I'm pretty positive that writing maybe some kind of pop song composition or something wouldn't be as difficult for you as for somebody who's just starting out, because classical composition, learning all those cadences and whatnot, chords, is probably a lot more difficult. But I do have one question, like, Because I don't know how it goes in the circles of classical music, but is it somewhere? I'm pretty sure it's very competitive. So like at some point when you go out there with other people, do you realize that you don't want to do the musical career because you're not at the top level? Because you know what I mean? Like imagine you play chess or something. That's the only analogy I can pull up. And you know that you're not, I don't know, the top few % talented.
Yeah.
So like, does it give you a lot, like a little?
That's definitely part of it. I went to, I'm from Florida, born and raised, and I was competing, like I said, violin and piano since I was very young. So I was doing a lot of competitions, and I was kind of, there's a small circle of us who were always sort of at the top my whole childhood. And I recognized that, like I was sort of a big fish in a small pond, we say in the U.S. And then when I went to college, I purposely chose not to go for music. And so I ended up at a college that's a very large school, very good school, but not at all known for music. And so when I switched to music, and like I said, the music department knew me well, I was again a big fish in a small pond. And I always recognized that. So I knew once I go to another level, it'll be a different environment. And that's what happened. I went to a conservatory for my master's, and I was surrounded by people who were amazing, incredibly talented. So that was a large factor, what you described. The other thing is that I would say I had a very strong performance anxiety that was something that just made it very hard for me to envision having a performing career, because I rarely felt comfortable performing. I felt like I was always performing at like 60-70% of my ability because of all these, I would practice, prepare, and the morning of a performance, I feel like I'm at close to 100%, and then when I perform, it just everything always doesn't go as I had prepared. So
totally can relate to
and so I felt like that plus the emotions is so draining each time to perform. I just felt like this can't be a career for me, and there's other things people do who have performing degrees. They don't all have performing careers, solo careers. It's very, very few people can make it that way. But still, you do, if you're focused on that, you will expect to perform as much as you can. And then I just didn't think that was something I'd want to do. It affected my non-classical career as well. Not that I had that same degree of performance anxiety, because I think classical music, there's sort of an expectation to do things exactly a certain way. I mean, there's room for interpretation, but whatever your interpretation is, you then recreate that and you do it the way you intend to exactly. Whereas when in other forms of music, we have a lot.
Jazz.
Yeah, there's a lot more room to have mistakes and to do different things. So the performance anxiety was less in other genres, but still, it was just tough for me to get in front of people, because my mentality was that I need to present as well as I can. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I understand that. There was another guest, Mitch, and he had the same problem. Like, he was trained piano and performed for like family members and friends and all that, and then found out like he doesn't like, or it gives him kind of pressure to follow all the scores and sheets. And well, fast forward, he's now a film scoring composer, because he wanted to do something, for himself, something to different, add a little touch to it. So yeah, which brings me to another question would be, so now you graduated conservatory of music. Now, did you have a clear idea that, okay, I don't want to pursue the performance, as you said, but I'm going to create a pop rock album right now?
Yeah.
Were you writing something at that point already?
I had been writing music all along, probably from just before my senior year in high school until graduating from grad school. I was always writing music in other genres. So that was my connection to other things. And I would usually have different projects going on, because even though I didn't really intentionally pursue performing in bands as much as I wish I had, I still had friends who were aware, and then there would be other musicians who would hear some things I did and then say, yeah, let's do something. So I was still doing stuff. Just I feel like I could have really put a lot more effort into it than I did. So I was writing music all along. All that whole time. And once I graduated, I looked for work in music. I was actually able to get a, what's it called? I forgot now.
Substitute professor?
Yeah, I was a professor, but what's the term for that? When it's not a tenured track, it's
I wouldn't know.
Totally blanking right now. It's not important though.
Right.
So I was a professor of music at a college, small college, just doing like the intro, the very rudimentary music courses, which was cool, but not really what I wanted to pursue. And then I also got work in a nonprofit advocating for minority participation in classical music. So that sort of became my mission. I really bought into what the organization was doing, and so that ended up being my primary focus for about 5-6 years moving forward. But that also allowed me a lot of freedom and flexibility to do music, to do other aspects of music. So I was playing and performing with different projects. I was usually sort of a hired musician, I'd say. I was still writing a lot, but I wasn't doing my own performance of my own music. Yeah.
So when did the breaking point come in your life when you said, you know what, enough, I'm going to make an album?
Oh, yeah. It wasn't so much a breaking point. I think it was just a culmination of all these years of all this writing, and I didn't see myself as, I told you, the performance anxiety thing. So I didn't see myself as a music star, like I'm going to be the person in the spotlight. I saw myself as if I was performing, I would be sort of one of the people on the side, or what I really want to do is write music for people who would go perform. And so that was the impetus of the album, was that I had all these dozens and dozens of songs, and I was just like, let me choose the best ones, I think, from different aspects or different sounds, I guess. I tried to get some country stuff in there, some R&B stuff in there, and then try to have this as sort of a representation of what I can write for singers, for other people to perform. So that was the impetus. As it happened, in conjunction with my real life, we started recording the album. It was probably like a year-long process.
Was it tough to find the right person? Just like you have your little babies and you really need to pick carefully.
So this was before. You mean babies as in the music?
As in music,
yeah. Okay. Because it was before I had kids. It wasn't too difficult. It was a process, but I think I found good people, the right people, and it worked out. But it took a year. Just the recording, in production, was probably about 12 months, and in that time was when I sort of stopped doing music. And so I was sort of, in my real life, I was kind of not doing music anymore, and I was beginning to shift to the business my wife and I were going to launch. But then at the same time, I was like, okay, I need to finish up tying up some loose ends with the album that we had already begun recording. So it's a little funny to look back at that time, but I was very proud of the album. But then once I finished it, it was just like something to have on the shelf. It wasn't really I was no longer trying to push it out. Well, I guess
that was your album, right?
Yeah.
Like I only heard maybe 2 collaboration songs on that.
Okay.
I mean, from the whole album, you only had like 2 collaborations, right? Most of it is your voice.
I see what you're asking. So all of the music is my music.
Right.
So I wouldn't really call it collaboration in that sense. But vocalists, I had a few. Actually, it'd be more. I think there were 4.
Oh, okay.
4 songs that were not me singing. Yeah. So 4 of the 10 tracks, were not not my voice.
So there was, we're talking about what, 2012, 13? Okay.
Yep, exactly right. And then, and actually I recorded about 4 or 5 other songs that we didn't put on the album. And I had other people singing them. And those I was holding back as like to be the unpublished songs that I was going to try to shop around. So we did a whole lot in that year. But it was just funny that it was also the time when I was kind of shifting my focus away from music. And after the album came out, I didn't do anything with it. I was thinking, okay, in a year, I'll come back to it and I'll start pushing it. But then, as we know, that year never came. And so this album just has been sitting there. One bright side is that, 10 years later, here I am in Taiwan now, and I have all these songs that nobody performed, that just never were sent anywhere. And now it feels really refreshing to have these songs that I've heard for a long time. Some of my friends have heard for a long time. And now actually hear them being performed live is really, I think that adds another element for me personally, for what's exciting about what I'm doing now.
So can you describe perhaps the situation, the moment when you kind of were like, the year just came? You know, how you postpone the year that never comes. And after 10 years, you're like, you know what? I'll get back into piano.
So it was, okay, so I'll first say that in that hiatus from music, I blame this on classical, but maybe it's just me personally, my own mentality. Every time, my wife or friends, but I can think of my wife many times, suggesting, hey, there's a piano, why don't you go play something? Just for her even. Sometimes there'd be other people, and I'm just like, no, I don't. But even in the simplest instance where it's just like a piano and she wants to hear me play something, I just had a lot of hesitation because I felt like I cannot play for people unless I'm
100% prepared.
It's just the way I had trained myself from all my classical days. And so that was part of the reason why I didn't play music for so long. As I was letting it slip out of my life, it became harder to bring back in because I felt like I needed to put everything into it to really represent myself well. And so, each year passed. And then we had COVID. And during COVID, everybody was saying, oh, I have this extra time to pursue something that I've been wanting to pursue but haven't for so long. So, okay, for me, that's music. So, all right, maybe I'll do that. And finally, at some point during COVID, okay, I'll pull out this keyboard that we had for my kids to learn, or just to play around at the time. And so then I started playing a little bit, and then it'd just be like 10 minutes here and there. My kids would join me. Oh, what are you doing? So it was just very, very simple, and I didn't really take it too far, but it got me back into thinking like, this is something I can do again. And I was starting to shed that mindset of having to be perfect. It's been an ongoing process now for several years, but I think I'm in so much of a better place than I was back then. I feel so much freer when I don't feel the need to like show people, oh, I can play. I that was the thing. I always felt like if I had this made believe like aura that people don't need to know about my music, but if they do know, then they need to know that I'm really good. That's something that I had to present. So
I get it, yeah.
But now I don't feel that at all anymore. It's just like, it's so freeing that, okay, whatever I can do, however good I can be, this is it. And, you can like enjoy that. And I realized that people aren't walking around judging me on my artistic ability. So why do I have to sit here thinking that way all the time? So all those times that my wife was like, oh, why don't you go play something? We'd be in a room full of non-musicians. I remember one time there was an event we were at, and there's a bunch of non-musicians playing music. Like they were just like fiddling around, and like, oh, Max, why don't you play something? And it's just so silly for me now. In hindsight, like, yeah, I could have just played something, but I was like, no. They asked me like 10 times. I'm like, no, I don't want to.
Even if you heard all the people fiddling.
It was a mental block for me in the past, and now, now I feel so much better because it's like I'm not bothered if somebody hears me play really poorly for something because it's like, well, it doesn't matter.
No, weight over your shoulder for sure. I bet. I have been playing guitar for less than your hiatus lasted, but I still like it so much. I kind of get it where you're coming from, like the classical training and all that. Like there's some standard that you want to follow, and it's there. It's ingrained in your mind, so you kind of want to like stand up to it and live up to it. But now that you said that you're back to it, and you see those songs coming back to life, that's it. I'm pretty sure it gives you joy because when you perform, you were. I think you were happy. That's safe to say.
Yeah. It's fun. It's fun.
Definitely.
So actually, it's funny you mentioned the recording at the Rhythm Music Studio,
right?
Because there was a big change between that, and I was pretty unhappy with my performance at that. There were a few extenuating circumstances, but I wasn't happy with it. Let's just say, and then at Rabbit Hole at Irrigation. In that month, there was a big change, and that change for me is sort of what I'm telling you now is how I felt a lot freer. But but it was specific to singing in front of people. Like that's been a big change for me. Because a year ago, when I would go to an open mic, I was like petrified performing. And it slowly got better, but I was still very nervous even like 2 months ago. And then just in the last 2 months, or that month, I did so much performing that at some point it just dissipated. And I realized it, I think it may have been that week when I performed the one that you saw. That week was when I realized, I'm no longer worried about singing in front of people.
So
like I
good.
just can just relax. And
So
so
good.
yeah, it made it a lot easier for me.
And that's it for our first part of our interview. Tune in next week to learn more about his work. And with a little bit of time left, I present to you his track from his album Opus 1 called Just Wanna Sing.
I hate the situation that I was facing. It just kept raising all these expectations. I ain't that amazing, so I started praying that one day, some way, I'm gonna make it. See, I wasn't wasting my education. My degree will be complete in several days. I'm gonna feel great when I cross the stage and they hand me my diploma as I'm smiling and saying, oh, I don't know how it's gonna be, but I'm ready for anything. I don't know what they'll think of me, but I don't care. I just wanna sing. I know it's cheesy, but you best believe me. Getting here this year, it wasn't easy. I practiced more hours to silence the doubters, but the pessimism kept growing louder and louder. Everything I gave up made me think I made a freak mistake. Could it be too late? I'm not getting any younger. It's already summer and I've made no plans. All I'm waiting for is just one chance. I don't